I am joined once again by my friend Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
Now, we have been working through, I'm looking down at a piece of paper, the senses. So just as a very quick overview, if you're picking this up a year on or even 8 weeks on as we are here, we're often taught that there are 5 senses. So I'll give the wrong versions and then I'll get them corrected. So we think of hearing, sight, smell, touch, and taste. We have now learned that hearing is the audio processing system, because it's not just what we hear, it's what our brain does with it.
And I have to interrupt you there, so
Oh, please.
Mr. Radio Man says audio processing. The rest of us in my world call it auditory processing. But that's why
I was so close.
Listening to you all the way, and I just thought, actually, if you are going to be going and correcting, I just thought, well, let me start there.
I was so close. Right, and then the second one is sight, which we call visual processing. Yay, okay, little question mark at the end. There's smell, which is the olfactory thing, O-L-E factory.
No E.
No E, sorry. I'm sort of close. You see, a little knowledge is dangerous. Right, and then we have touch, which is tactile processing. Yeah, okay. And then there's taste, which I can't remember.
Gustatory.
Gustatory, that's it. As in gestatory. We think of the gastro, which is probably the same original thing, isn't it? Which is all to do with stuff that goes in the mouth. Gastro stuff.
It's more gustation, G-U-S.
You see, this is why I'm not an occupational therapist. And the world rejoices. Yes, please stick to what you're doing, Andy B. Right, and then we have 2 more that we've looked at that you may not have heard of. One is the vestibular system, and one is the proprioception stuff. And those are 2 more senses that you may never have heard of, but they're really important. Proprioception, the example I think I remember, then we'll come on to you for number 8, is if you're doing touch typing, your proprioception abilities enable you to hold your hand in the right place, to remember where the keys are, for your memory to know to press so far, and that's all part of the proprioception system. Was that ish?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. So the information from muscles and joints. It's okay to call it the proprioceptive system.
Thank you.
Proprioception is what we call it, and I don't know if it's a name I've just made up. But I was also thinking it's really weird. We call it proprioception all the time. We talk about proprioception, but as a system, I just think, it's a proprioceptive system. I'm thinking, yeah.
Fine. You see, now that's like my little brief, quick test of Andy B, which I know we did properly a while back. But those are the 7 senses, 5 of which you probably have known of, 2 which you have but may not be aware of, but now you are. And now I'm moving on to number 8, for which I will move over to you, because this is not a sense as opposed to a number, a group of senses. So what is number 8?
Number 8 is interoception. Interoception.
How do you spell that?
Interoception.
Right.
Interoception.
Cool. And what is that?
A group of senses that pick up information from our internal organs. So lots of different pathways, neural networks that are going on underneath the skin. We don't class, obviously, the muscles and the joints are all part of the proprioceptive system. So if there was a big banner of interoceptors, well, anything inside of us would fit under that banner. But in this context, we mainly take it as those more specific internal organs of the bladder, the stomach, things that help us perceive internal hunger, pain on the inside, not taste. I'm supposed to go over the other 5. Heartbeat, feeling your blood pumping around your body, toileting. Those internal sensations are all part of the group that we class as interoceptors. And what makes them different, why I personally like to keep them separate, is that we can use sensory integration therapy and strategies to hit the other 7, mainly. But interoception is much more about using the mind to help us with our sensory processing, rather than using sensory integration and processing strategies fundamentally. which is a lot more about using the physical body to help our sensory processing. It can help in interoception, but most of the strategies that we work to help interoception and how we perceive what's going on inside us are often mind-based rather than actual sensory processing based physical activities, which is where I often go first because they are really powerful.
For example, then it might be I need to go for a wee. That's an interoception reaction to the bladder getting full, which then signifies, okay, this is effectively pain at one level, even if it's low level. That then triggers a response in the brain to think, oh, I need to go to the toilet. So is this the sort of thing that we're talking about?
It is exactly the type of thing that we're talking about, which is really important, especially for those who have their 2 to 3 year olds who are trying to do the whole potty training thing. Their interoceptive sensations may not yet be fully developed enough so that toileting is just going to be a massive headache for you. So the advice is don't get pressurized by anywhere or anyone to toilet train someone if they're not ready, because they literally cannot feel it at that point. You can try for certainly, but do not put any extra stress on them or on yourself to make potty training happen because they're just not ready.
I guess also, I mean, as much as we could probably more easily understand the idea of I'm holding a pen, I have dexterity, my fingers can manipulate the pen to be able to write letters. But when I'm 2, my ability to hold the pen is probably more of a fist because my fingers, dexterity, all that stuff, my, I suppose, individual coordination of joints and whatever, because I can move one finger or 2, that hasn't yet developed. We can sort of understand that to a point. If we try and use our pen in our right hand and all of a sudden we've got a broken arm, now we're trying to write with our left hand. Well, it's not so much that we're incompetent. It's just, well, we've never had to do that. So the ability for us to control our left hand if we're normally right-handed or vice versa, it's not going to be there. And I guess, is it sort of the same thing? Someone has some sort of brain injury after an accident and all of a sudden they're having to learn to walk again, not because they've forgotten or they become stupid and what's wrong with you. Actually, the brain's rewired, so therefore the mind isn't controlling the joints as it was before. Or am I going off into a different place?
We're going off into brain injury, but it's a really good description of what happens. We can see it in adults when we're used to kind of like we're familiar with children not developing or being a little bit slower than others, but actually you see it very profoundly in brain injury that actually the whole processing we need to start again, and we need to get the brain connected again. We need to get all the sensations rewired in to get us back to functioning again.
Okay, here's an example. So I had heart surgery in July this year, a few months ago when we're recording this. And as I tried to walk around the ward, which is one of the things they try and get you to do pretty quickly after having laid down, we want you to walk. The more quickly you are able to walk, the better it will heal. Right, fine. So off you go walking. And as I started walking around, my feet were dragging on the floor, which I don't normally do. And the nurse said, you've forgotten how to walk. You need to concentrate on what you're doing, which kind of baffled me because I thought, I had surgery this morning. It's now early afternoon. How can I have forgotten to walk in just a few hours? But she said, you need to concentrate on your walking because now things are different. You need to adapt, because I was trying to walk to avoid the cut, the incision, the bruising on my inner thigh. Therefore, now I'm walking differently and now I need to actually act differently. So all the guys on the ward were laughing, but the nurse quite rightly said, concentrate on your feet, concentrate on the movement. You basically forgotten how to walk.
It's huge. The amount of effort those who have sensory processing issues or those who are having to relearn how to use their bodies again, it is utterly exhausting. That you have to concentrate so much, and every little thing that you didn't even realize that you do automatically, you have to think about. It is quite a shock to the system, but also an awful lot of energy and time and focus is given to doing those things, and your day can just be taken up with and now I have to concentrate on how I lift my leg, how I move it, how hard I put it down on the ground, how much weight I transfer over to the other side so I don't tip. It's a lot of thinking through every single step again.
So here's another thought. You buy yourself a brand new pair of shoes. I've got some new boots recently, and the soles are perfect. They are as they're supposed to be, which is much higher, taller, rounder, squarer, if you like, than my old pair, which is worn down. So I go to walk in my new boots, which are actually far more grippy anyway because the sole's better. And now I'm tripping and stumbling, thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm in my 40s and I can't walk. All that's happened is now my feet are not exactly in the same places that they were. The heel, the sole, the actual rubber part of the boot, now that's different. I've got to relearn how to put my foot down because the last pair of shoes were quite rounded at the back. That's how they were designed to be. These have got a very square right angle back to the sole. Therefore, I can't just let my foot slap to the floor because now I'm going to trip because the back's going to catch earlier. We're talking about half a centimetre to a centimetre here, you know. What's that, an eighth of an inch? And yet I'm stumbling because I've got to relearn how to use my feet. All I've done is bought a new pair of shoes.
And it's the beauty of how remarkable our bodies are at adapting to life. But we do have those moments of, oh, crumbs, there is something different here that we have to, we call it an adaptive response in therapy. That's what we're always trying to elicit. We stimulate, we challenge people to do things like putting on a different set of shoes, but we would do it in a way that obviously is safe. And we often use swings and other equipment to stimulate the body because that's all completely new. People don't normally swing around the place. So it does challenge the brain in a way, like putting on a new pair of shoes. But I just think it's a remarkable thing that we are able to adapt as we are, even though we have those little moments of, oh, I'm growing. Or in fact, for teenagers, again, those growth spurts, or any of our children, they can really, really be clumsy in those times when the growth happens. And it's like the equivalent of putting on a new pair of shoes. It's just that their bodies have grown massively overnight. And therefore, how they used to walk up the stairs, all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, actually, oops, tripped, bang, wallop. Their bodies going up and down the stairs is not as finesse as it used to be. Until their brains learn where their new body is, how big it's grown, and adjust accordingly.
I don't mind being used as an example for these things. And we've done a big thing on my heart surgery because we drew lots of stuff about that for sensory health. But the one thing that really struck me, what you said then, I was absolutely exhausted. And the exhaustion was from walking up a flight of stairs. And it was literally that level of concentration. I've got to lift my foot up and it's got to move forwards. And then why am I having such difficulty doing something I've done for more than four decades plus? I've had heart surgery. I wasn't even unconscious on a general anesthetic. I was awake the whole thing. And yet here I am at home. And it's that level of fatigue that came from just walking up a flight of stairs. So I would come down in the morning and I wouldn't go up. We have a downstairs toilet, but I wouldn't go up the stairs again if I had to. And I really, because I was exhausted trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the biggest things, if folks can take away from this, and what I try and communicate when I'm talking to other people, is that acceptance of people's level of ability when they're really, really trying hard. It's not as if they're not trying. It's not as if they're not wanting to be difficult. They're not wanting to be lazy. That's often a word that is put out there as well. It's just like these. If people could understand just how much effort it takes to just live, for you, it's like going up the stairs. For some people, that the amount of energy and effort that it takes into getting through the day, whether it be at school, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be at home, it's how we can offer that level of compassion and understanding, and for the individuals themselves to learn what can I pace myself with? What can I do today? And what can't I? That's a big part of sensory health too. The individual, just as much as everybody else around them, supporting at whatever level that they can in order for them to flourish and thrive in life. But the individual themselves, it's really important that they take notice of how they are and what they can do and when they can do it and what they can do to support their function.
I'm using some physical examples here of stuff that's happened to me, and I think it's maybe helping us explain some of the internal issues that are going on. I had heart surgery. I'm fine now. I was fine within hours, really, but the recovery time was hard but I had a supportive family around me. We went out for a walk. They knew I was going to be slow because I was told to walk, so I walked every single day. But I
Mm.
remember my first walk on a main road, which is outside our house. I wanted to walk because there's a walk we used to do, and I didn't even get to the corner. What is it? 100 yards from the house. That was all. I couldn't even get that far. I had to come back. It was putting one foot ahead and then another foot, and the level of concentration, the amount of fatigue grows, and then, which is, I guess, is where we kind of come into with you more so, it's that frustration starts to grow. Why can't I do what I could do? Then the aggression starts to come of, I should be able to do this, and all that starts to build, and then you get even more tired because now struggling to walk becomes this monster of a hill. It's like skipping up Mount Everest rather than just walking across a flat surface. That's how it feels. But I knew that I would just keep walking and it would fade and I would get better because that's what they told me. I trusted the doctor and the surgeon. Okay, fine, we'll do this. If you don't have that, how then do you come along as Laure Jackson? I'm here to help you, because they're assuming, like I did, well, is this going to pass, but maybe it won't. How do you then work with someone, especially with that frustration and aggression of, why don't I now know that I need to wee? Why don't I now know that I've eaten too much food? Which is, I guess, the same thing as interoception. Yes, interoception. So how do you then help people? Is my long-winded question.
Yeah, yeah, because we have to get to I'm hoping that people come to me before they get to the point where the individual's just given up, because it's very easy. It would be very easy. You have enough strength of character and resilience to be able to press on, knowing and trusting that they have said, I am going to get better. I just need to work through this. I just need to walk every day and it will get better, and I will get through this. There are so many people who are coming because it's coming to me and they can't see the way forward. They have no hope. And that's really, really hard. And it's like, there is hope. There is always hope. Hope in lots of different spheres and lots of different ways. But from a sensory perspective, it's come and connect to find out what is going on. Even the relief of recognizing, oh, tell you what, this Saturday, I had a family who came in and that they were, can't give any details, obviously, for specific reasons. But just a child who has dropped out of school because of looking like a mental health issue. And we took an hour and we talked through all the sensory processing aspects of how it was for him. They were huge. And the mum at the end of it gave me a big hug. And she said, nobody has ever believed us. Nobody has ever seen that these things were real. And it was, I came back home and I was quite upset because it's like, this isn't right that we have so many people who are hurting, who the parents who've been told, oh, it's their parenting that's the issue. I'm not saying that parents are perfect. None of us are perfect, but we need the whole message of the power of sensory processing to get out there and to connect with people, because he was affected by sights, sounds, smells. His whole body just wasn't working well. He had his sensory-based motor issues. Everything for this poor lad was just against him, and he genuinely was doing the best he could. It wasn't great from that perspective. And I can understand why he, for example, had kind of given up. And it was just like, I just don't want to be there. Nobody gets me. I can't do what they're asking me to do. And I'm thinking, no, of course you can't, but it's not because you're stupid. It's because you've got all these other factors going on. You've got your exhaustion. You've just got everything. So it's like, let's assess. Anybody who's struggling in any capacity, let's have a conversation or just investigate sensory processing and see, could there be any element in any of the senses could be affecting you. And for some people, it just takes one sense out of kilter to really impact a life. And this poor fella had loads.
I mean, completely opposite end of in a simplistic way, but the fact that my 4-year-old Peter couldn't hold a pen at the age of 4, everybody in his class could. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just they were nearly 5 and he was literally just 4. That's more than a quarter of his life different in age. And if we think, I'm 40. So if I'm saying 10 years, I've only had 10 years less than somebody else, we understand the difference of experience. In a child that's 4, a quarter of your life is a year. That's a huge amount of time. to then be able to use a pen to do these laces. I know we've used that example before, but I just think so often we're quick to, this is definitely a conversation we've had multiple times. We're so quick to stick a little box. That's what they are. Okay, they're falling over, so they're clumsy and they're lazy because they can't bother to hold a pen. Well, yes, it's a possibility. It's also a possibility that that's not the case, because most of us don't like to drop stuff. Most of us don't like to look clumsy. It isn't how we want to be. Therefore, if we see somebody who's regularly clumsy, it's doubtful that they're being deliberately so, because none of us likes to drop stuff. At the simplest of levels, we have to pick it up again. It could be broken. It could be milk on the floor. It gets worse and worse. So we don't want to do those things. So I guess my thought after looking at all these sensory issues, sensory abilities of our bodies is, so often we just need to take a step back and think, okay, what might be behind the reason why this is happening, rather than that's stupid, you're wrong, what's the problem? I remember vividly, I had to go in hospital. I was in A&E. My heart was doing really, really weird things going back a number of years. They couldn't get a cannula in while I was in there. So I had let's say about a dozen holes in my arms. My arm was almost completely black and blue because of all the cannulas. They couldn't fit into my veins, because part of my issue was the veins were sort of collapsing as they were going through. As I came out, my arms were so tender, I got my family to walk ahead of me so that no one could bump into me, because I was pretty sure if anybody catches my arms, I'm going to throw up and pass out. Because that was the level of tenderness I had as I came out of hospital. So my family dutifully went through the open doors. They kind of put a ring, like some sort of security detail, literally, so that no one could knock into my arms, because I was paranoid and petrified, rightly so at that point. Actually, if someone hits my arm, I think I will actually pass out, because when they took the cannula out, they had to stop what they were doing because I was about to pass out and throw up over the nurse. So she cut all the hairs, because that's the tenderness.
Yeah.
So there are things we can do, and there are things that we can prepare for. And I knew that it would get better, but it was very, very scary for me knowing that if somebody hits my arm right now, a bit like somebody who's got overly sensitive, which I was at that point because they were all bruised, I'm going to react and it will be out of my control. I'm not going to want to throw up and pass out. But now this is beyond my ability. And I guess what I'm saying is, like the clumsiness, it's not, generally speaking, what they want to do.
Yeah. And yesterday I was in school and they were talking about the lad hitting out. So we went through his sensory thumbprint. We looked and I said, his tactile system, yours was particularly sensitive from that perspective, which was going to be impacting you passing out, throwing up. In a fight or flight response, this little fellow was just hitting everybody. And it's just like, well, of course, his skin system is totally on alert. So he is going to do that, not because he wants to. It is that instinctive reaction. You have something that comes against you. Also, it would be interesting if it was how much is nature and nurture from your perspective, because you're just such a lovely fella anyway. whether your natural instinct was more of a feint and a throw rather than a hit out. But it's slight. Yeah, obviously it's a very different thing. We're not talking about tactile overreactivity. There are physical reasons why your tactile system was more on a more sensitive through the procedures that you've been through. But yeah, there are so many things that just spontaneously happen that are not thinking processes. Interoception, that's where we ask people to pay attention and start to recognize what's going on inside them. But you probably, after surgery, you could probably feel, I wonder what could you feel on the inside? Could you hear your heartbeat? Could you feel your heartbeat? Could you feel your blood pumping? And yeah.
Yeah, there were a few things. One, when they were doing the procedure a few months ago, they were burning the inside of my heart to correct a problem. The burning sensation in my shoulder, which freaked me out in surgery because I'm awake, and they said, don't worry, that's normal. That is something that I carried. I don't say I've still got it today, several months on, right, but some days it does feel sensitive, I guess is how I might word that. But they said, well, literally, we're burning your heart. The nerves are going absolutely mad because they're sensing in your heart burning. Well, yes, that's the whole point. That's a successful procedure. But of course, the nerves go from your heart all over the body, and the nerve from my heart to my right shoulder, because of where they were in the heart, they said, yeah, that's the one that's going to feel it. Your nerves are now saying, we're being burned. So your body's gone mad, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Right, we call that referred pain. Actually, yeah, when it's like going elsewhere, the actual thing is happening in one place, but you actually feel the pain elsewhere.
I think it was referred. I don't think it was actually burning my shoulders. I certainly hope it wasn't, unless they missed. But yeah, when I've been in hospital, I had a couple of bouts of atrial fibrillation, which were not connected to the reason for the surgery, actually. But when I came home, they said you're going to feel your heart beating, and I would lie in bed thinking I can feel my heart beating, and I couldn't sleep for days. I did to start with, but then you start to not sleep because when I'm lying here and I can feel my heart beating, I can feel it in my ears, I can hear it. It's really hypersensitive. And like what was lovely was I met a guy who said he'd had heart surgery, and he said, just be aware you will feel your heart. You will feel it beating in a way you've never done. We know if we go for a run, we panic, we jump out of the way of a moving car, we're going to feel our heart beating because the adrenaline suddenly kicked in. But he said this will be normal. Your heart will be at a resting rate, and you will feel every single beat. And I'm sure at some point it felt like I could feel all the individual bits of the heart beating, because it isn't just one on off; it's a bit more than that. At times I thought I can feel all those individual ones going on. Now, maybe that's not true, but I was hypersensitive to it. And that's the thing. My hypersensitivity would fade with time. Occasionally now I think about the heart surgery, and that night I can guarantee I'm going to lie awake. I can feel it in my ears. I can hear it in my heart. Those nights come and they go because I remember what I went through. But for that little boy that you met, he doesn't have the luxury of knowing that in 2 months' time that will fade, because this isn't just an experience. This is a life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why you matter in what you do. It's true. And I'm so glad you managed to help that little lad, because honestly, if we're doing something that's wrong, it's wrong. It needs to be stopped. If someone's punching somebody, it's out of line. It's never going to be okay. However, why? We need to get into the question of asking why, don't we? Not that's wrong. Well, yes, it is. You shouldn't punch someone. That's wrong. Effectively, it could be ultimately criminal, but that's sort of going off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not good to do that. But why? What's the reason why? Are you just out of control, aggressive? Fine. Okay, maybe you need to go to prison when you're older. Fine. That may be a solution. But in a child, why are they hitting out? Is it something they've seen? Is it a reactive thing? Or as you were able to ask the question, why? Well, they're overreactive because their skin. Okay, well, if that's the reason, there are things that can be done.
Absolutely. And that's what, if there's anybody listening who the sensory super system like just needs to get out there as a way of helping people, because then it's the question of, well, why are they doing that? But people don't know what to ask and they don't know what to look for. And the thing that I've designed to help get people out there is to give them the tools. It was clinically peer reviewed over the summer with just some beautiful, excellent feedback about how good it is, really. And it's there to be used. It is there to go across homes, schools, workplaces, anywhere where people are people. Anybody who's in a capacity who wants to help others or to change a situation, then this is what this is here for, because it's there to equip and empower you. And I'm there on the back end or the front end, to be there to ask questions and help you through whatever circumstance you're going through.
I was worried that somehow I'd failed the interview today because I thought we got off a tangent. But actually, I think what we're talking about is really the whole point of why we spent a year, and we're going to carry on talking about sensory health, because it's very little known about. I mean, I only knew the five senses: hearing, sight, smell, touch, taste. That was the culmination of my knowledge of the senses, and it meant nothing to me because my body basically works pretty well. I can taste okay, I can smell okay. My eyes, apart from an astigmatism which needs glasses, they're okay. I've got pretty good hearing, so that was it. And yet over the last year we've learned, well, there's so much more to it than just that, which is why I love this series of 8 we've finally done. And then you've got the vestibular, then you've got the proprioception, then you've got the interoception as well. And all this stuff makes up who we are. This is how God designed us to be. And like anything with many moving parts, sometimes they break, sometimes they age, sometimes they get brittle, sometimes they just need realignment. I know I've talked about steering on a car. You hit a curb, it goes out. Okay, now it's out of whack. Let's get it back so it's straight again. But that's the bit where you come along and say, okay, well, I can see that wheel's pointing the wrong way. Let's just get it pointed back and then let's look at what's going on. Because while there's some issues going on, we can't really deal with the other issues. We need to deal with the stuff that's easy and obvious.
Absolutely.
Right. I've enjoyed this one. You can tell, can't you? If you want to have some help, if your child is hitting out and you're thinking, is it bad behavior? Are they just being naughty? Is it a tantrum? Well, possibly, but it could also be a sensory issue, in which case you might want to get in touch with Anne or Jackson. Perhaps, like me, you've had heart surgery and it's months ago and you're still struggling to walk. Now you're suddenly clumsy and your feet aren't working right. You might need to contact Anne or Jackson to say what's wrong. And it could be a sensory issue. And that is something I've learned from birth right the way through to pre-death, and actually even pre-birth, actually, in a sense. There's sensory issues going on which are important and they matter, and that's where Anne Laure Jackson comes in. We have not finished this. We're going to have much more, but I've loved this 8-part series.
That's great, Andy. Thank you.
If you want to catch up with Anne Laure Jackson, if you're thinking, can we have some help, please? I don't know what's wrong with myself, my child, my father, my wife, whatever. Pure247radio.org, pure247radio.org/ALJ. That will connect you to Anne Laure Jackson. Thank you, Anne. I really can't, I mean it. I really enjoy these because I've learned loads. Hearing is so much more than what we hear. And just that alone means we need further investigation, which is what I love about this. So thank you.
Thank you. Bless you.
The Pure newsletter comes out once a month and is designed to build up, entertain and encourage you. Sign up for our newsletter at pure247radio.org.